I get a lot of comments across various social media platforms that go something like this. Why do you defend Muslims? They would kill you for being transgender. Try going to Saudi Arabia. They would stone you for being gay. You're defending people who would use Sharia law to murder you. If Muslims are so great, why don't you move to the Middle East? Oh right, because they'd behead you.
And there's a reason for that. I'm gonna show you a few clips to actually prove my point that Riley Dennis is completely wrong on in this instance.
What is the penalty for leaving the Muslim faith?
To be honest, I cannot back that point up.
Dr. Muqaddam, what is the penalty for apostasy?
And, before...
We keep coming down this apostasy.
Well,
give us a quick answer on what is the penalty for apostasy.
You very well know, if it's an Islamic country, then the Sharia is very clear. Apostasy is dealt with the death penalty.
Can we have the camera? Can we have this camera focusing on all the audience here? Can we have this camera focusing on all the audience? Because every now and then, every time we have a conference, every time we invite a speaker, they always can come with the same accusations. This speaker supports death penalty for homosexuals. This speaker supports death penalty for this crime or that. He is homophobic. They subjugate women, etc., etc., etc. It's the same old stuff coming all the time. And we always try to tell them, I always try to tell them that, look, it's not that speaker that we're inviting who has these extreme radical views, as you say. These are general views that every Muslim actually has. Every Muslim believes in these things. Just because they're not telling you about it, or just because they're not out there in the media, doesn't mean they don't believe in them. So I will ask you, everyone in the room, how many of you are normal Muslims? You're not extremists, you're not radical, just normal Sunni Muslims. Please raise your hands. Everybody, mashallah, subhanallah. Okay, take down your hands again. How many of you agree that men and women should sit separate? Please raise your hands. Everyone agree. Everyone agree. Brothers and sisters. Subhanallah. So it's not just these radical sheikhs then. Allahu Akbar. Next question. How many of you agree that the punishments described in the Quran and the Sunnah, whether it is death, whether it is stoning for adultery, whatever it is, if it is from Allah and His Messenger, that is the best punishment ever possible for humankind, and that is what we should apply in the world. Well, who agrees with that? Allahu Akbar. Are you all radical extremists? Subhanallah. So all of you are saying that you are common Muslims, you all go to the different masajids, no way, or are you like a specific sect, like the Islam net sect or anything like that? Are you like that? No. Are you like that? Please raise your hand if you're like this extreme Islam net sect or anything like that. No one. Allahu Akbar. How many of you just go to these normal masajids in Norway, the normal Sunni mosques? Please raise your hands. Allahu Akbar. So what's the politicians gonna say now? What's the media gonna say now? That we're all extremists? We're all radicals? We need to deport all of us from this country? Subhanallah. Allahu Akbar. Takbir! Takbir! Takbir!
There's nothing to be embarrassed about this. That death is the sentence. In an Islamic society where people want the law of Islam to rule, we have to execute it. Islam protects the souls of people primarily. Islam doesn't accept people's faith to be compromised, to be threatened. And with this sentence, you will be forgiven and you won't be accountable for it in the hereafter. You See, we want the best. We want the best for people. We have to have that compassion for people. With homosexuality, the same. Out of compassion, let's get rid of him now, because he's contaminating society.
There's a reason I put those clips together after Riley Dennis's statement, is because the LGBTQ community would not do well under Islam, and people like Riley Dennis would be punished with either jail time, physical violence like lashing, or even death in Islam. At
These
least
comments are
in
frustrating
most
because,
countries.
for one, they show a deep misunderstanding of Islam, but also they try to use queer people as an excuse to discriminate against Muslims. And I am not here for that. I'm a queer, trans, gay person, and I will happily support and defend all of my Muslim siblings. I refuse to be used as an excuse for people to discriminate against Muslims.
I don't think you fully understand Islam, and nobody is using Islam as an excuse to discriminate against Muslims. See, this whole Islamophobia thing is stupid in my opinion, because nobody is saying all Muslims, but the problem is that a lot of Muslims have very regressive ideas, and for some reason feminism is actually supporting these ideas, which would take a lot of rights, not only for men but also for mostly women in the Western world, away from us, just because you wanna support Islam, which would happen under Sharia law. And again, this is not talking about all Muslims, but there are many who hold these views.
So let's start at the beginning. Why do people believe this? Why do people think that all Muslims hate queer people? I would argue that it's because that's the only way they're portrayed in our media. Muslims are never main characters, and they're rarely protagonists. If you see a Muslim in a TV show or a movie, they're probably a terrorist. And if you don't know any Muslims in your everyday life, you probably only hear about them when there's a terrorist attack.
But see, that's the problem. We have a media today that refuses to call things radical Muslims or terrorists even. I mean, look at Germany, look at Sweden. There are big problems with this, and the first step to recognizing a problem is to admit there is a problem. Are you seriously suggesting that just because someone isn't a character in a movie now in Hollywood, which mostly consists of white people but has a lot of diversity considering the demographic of the United States, people are seriously thinking of Muslims as bad people? No, it's not, because not all Muslims, and who is actually saying that all Muslims are bad people? I would actually need a citation for that.
But there are 1.6 billion Muslims in this world. That's a lot of people, way too many for them to all share the exact same beliefs and principles. For instance, just like there are different denominations of Christianity, there are various sects of Islam. The main ones are Sunni and Shia, but even within those, there are tons of further divisions. Thinking of Islam as a monolith would be like saying that all Catholics, Protestants, Lutherans, Baptists, and Episcopalians believe the same thing, but that would be ridiculous.
Again, be specific. Give me some studies or citations or any evidence that people think this way.
Plus, even though people generally associate Muslims with the Middle East, the majority of them, about 62%, live in the Asia-Pacific region. Indonesia is the country with the largest Muslim population. But when people try to talk about what all Muslims believe, they usually reference the laws of Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, or Afghanistan.
So what's your point? Because this only proves that Muslims aren't one race, but it's an ideology.
The fact is, oppressive governments can use any excuse to impose their will. In Saudi Arabia, for instance, you can be jailed, tortured, or even executed for being gay or transgender. That doesn't mean that this is a Muslim law that all Muslims support. It's a horrible law, but it's a law put in place by the Saudi Arabian government, not the religion of Islam. It'd be kind of like if we had no separation of church and state and the Westboro Baptist Church was in charge. Do you think they'd be very kind to gay people? Of course not, but that wouldn't represent all Christians across the globe.
First off, that's a false equivalence, because the Westboro Baptist Church aren't going around killing people. There are horrible people, sure, but they're not going around blowing themselves up and killing people or hurting people. And they're about, what, 40 people? And people in Islamic countries do support these laws. I mean, where are you getting this from? Because the people living in these countries do somehow support it. Now, do they agree with all of them? Hard to know. Again, hashtag not all Muslims. But people living there do support somewhat of the laws that are there.
That's because Saudi Arabia's laws are largely based on Wahhabism, which is a specific sect of Islam, just like the Westboro Baptist Church's version of baptism is a sect of Christianity. And just like most Christians disagree with the Westboro Baptist Church, most Muslims disagree with Wahhabism. And like with all things, it's complicated and nuanced and not one-sided.
Again, I'm not defending Westboro Baptist Church. They're horrible. They're absolutely deplorable. But again, you don't have any statistics to back this up with that with this Wahhabism. So I'm just gonna use Hitchens' razor. Anything that can be claimed without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
In Iran, for instance, homosexuality is illegal and you can be executed for it. But since the 1980s, the Iranian government has partially funded sex change operations for transgender people.
I don't know if it's out of ignorance or you being malicious, but this so-called sex change isn't really a sex change. It's basically forced upon gay people to go through the sex change, especially gay men, and if they don't, they either have to go to jail or face the death penalty. So saying this is a government-funded, ooh, it's so good, is a complete lie.
And since 2012, the government requires health insurance companies to fully cover the cost of those operations. But as proof that anti-queer laws are straight from Islam, people love to point to Sharia law, which they tend to think is one list of rules set forth in the Quran that all Muslims follow. However, Sharia law is different depending on who you ask, and it draws from both the Quran and the Sunnah, which consists of a bunch of different texts. Because of this, different sects have different definitions of Sharia law.
I'm just gonna quote a few lovely quotes from the Quran itself, showing how lovely it is living under Sharia law. For ye practice your lust on men, in preference to women ye are indeed a people transgressing beyond bounds, and we rain down them a shower of brimstone. And we have another one. Will ye commit abomination such as no creature ever did before you? Of all creatures in the world will ye approach males, and leave those whom Allah has created for you to be your mates. Nay, ye are people transgressing. If two men among you are guilty of lewdness, punish them both. If they repent and amend, leave them alone. And we have, of course, some hadith and sirah saying, the Messenger of Allah said, whoever you find doing the action of people of Lut, execute the one who does it and the one to whom it is done. And here's another one. If a man who is not married is seized committing sodomy, he will be stoned to death. The Prophet cursed effeminate men. Those men who are in the similitude assume the manners of women, and those who assume the manners of men. And he said, turn them out of your houses. The Prophet turned out and such and such man, and Umar turned out such and such woman. Whoever is found conducting himself in the manner of the people of Lot, kill the doer and kill the receiver. May Allah curse him who does what Lot's people did. And we can go on and on. I'm gonna give a link in the description below, so you can see my source. But you see, Sharia law isn't lovely. It is horrible.
For some, it's praying 5 times a day and not drinking alcohol. But for others, it's stoning gay people to death. There are several passages in the Quran that people use to justify that, but none of them explicitly say that you have to kill gay people. They're kind of vague and open to interpretation, especially depending on how you translate them. However, nothing is vague about homosexuality in the Christian Bible. Leviticus 18:22 says that it's an abomination, and Leviticus 20:13 says that if a man has sex with a man, you have to put him to death. That's pretty direct, and yet we're not saying that all Christians believe in Leviticus law and want to kill all the gay people they see.
I agree that's horrible, but the Bible is just as horrible as of a book that the Quran is. The difference is that the people who follow the Quran at the moment are doing violence on the behalf of the ideology that is Islam. We don't see the amount of violence and frankly the propaganda coming out of Christians in the same amount that it comes from the religion or the ideology of Islam. That's the main difference. And I'm not defending Christians here, because there have been done terrible stuff on behalf of Christians in the past. But at the moment, we're talking about Islam and how terrible it is. It is worse for the people living down there, because they're experiencing the terror attacks, the violence, and how terrible it is living under these laws. So yeah, I don't know what your point really here is, just to compare something just for the sake of it.
That's because there are many different interpretations of the Bible in Christianity, and many of them are peaceful and accepting of homosexuality. The same can be said for Islam. There are plenty of Muslims who have no problem with gay people, and in fact, there are gay and queer Muslims. And just as some Christians believe that homosexuality is a sin, but you shouldn't be killed for it, the same is true for some Muslims. Islam is not anti-queer any more than Christianity is. And look, if you're an atheist right now and you're sitting there thinking that all of these religions are horrible and we can't tolerate any of them, I want you to reconsider that. I'm an atheist myself, which means I'm not a huge fan of the Bible or the Quran, but I do recognize that there are many good Christians and many good Muslims. In my experience, I found that your religion, or lack thereof, is a very bad indicator of how compassionate of a person you are. I get messages every day telling me to kill myself and calling me all sorts of anti-trans and anti-queer garbage. The majority of these seem to come from online atheist communities, and I get a good amount of hate from Christians who think I'm going to hell. But most of the time I hear from Muslims, it's a message of support and acceptance. So why do I support Muslims? Because I can recognize that the laws of a few Middle Eastern countries do not represent the views of all 1.6 billion Muslims. Because I know that being a Muslim doesn't automatically mean being against queer people, because there are queer Muslims and trans Muslims and gay Muslims. And because Muslims face a huge amount of discrimination in the US and Western Europe because of the actions of a militant group in the Middle East that they have nothing to do with.
So if Muslims are so discriminated against, give me citations, studies, and facts that Muslims are being persecuted and discriminated against. But you're not gonna do that. If you're gonna claim something, use a citation.
When we're fighting for social justice, I think it's important to not leave Muslims behind. Hate crimes against Muslims are a real problem. It's now a pretty regular occurrence for mosques to be burnt down, and on January 29th, a white nationalist shot and killed 6 Muslims at a mosque in Quebec and injured 19 others. Anti-Muslim violence is real, and our feminism has to recognize that. I try to make sure that my feminism is as intersectional as possible, because people can have a lot of different marginalized identities, and that means supporting Muslim rights as well.
So we have finally a specific incident which he is talking about. Now, this incident which he talked about here, terrible what happened, and I really condemn it. But that's one incident, that's hardly a trend. And again, terrible what happened. But what the overall discriminations are Muslims facing? And this whole intersectional feminism to include everything. That's what feminism is about. You love to use the dictionary definition of what feminism is, but then broaden your definition whenever suits you. That it basically ruins the what feminism is, or what it's supposed to be, and that is to fight for women's rights. And in the West right now, feminism has achieved its goal. So I don't know what your point is, but again, I have to state this again. Terrible thing what happened in Canada, but one incident does not show a trend, and it's horrible when something like this happens, but there is no large scale of discrimination against Muslims, or this whole Islamophobia thing that is happening right now, because right now there is a lot of problems going around with people coming from the Middle East and having these views. Germany has had problems with a quarter at least of the immigrants coming from there being arrested and fined or somehow jailed. and this somehow being hushed down. So there is a problem coming from the ideology of Islam.
It's important to remember that intersectional feminism means fighting for the rights of all people, not just whatever group you belong to. It's like that one saying, nobody is free while others are oppressed.
And right now there is nobody being oppressed in the West. It is illegal, and if you observe something that where people are being oppressed or being discriminated against, you should report it to the police. If it violates the law, they should face prison sentences. So thank you guys for watching. This is something new I tried. Give me feedback of things I can improve, because this is the first time I tried something like this. So thank you guys, and yeah, see you around.